All right, so tonight we're going to cover building a web application without doing any coding, like at all. So, and just for a little kicks and giggles, coding is never fun. All right, so who am I? I'm Kenny Robinson. I have a bachelor's in business from the University of Alabama. I also have a minor in computer science. My day job is doing production support as an IT consultant, and it also includes doing automations, data analysis, process improvements, the whole 9 yards. You can look me up on LinkedIn, that is the URL, and I also have a GitHub account. If you go to the HackMGM, I'm a person in the organization, and you can get to me from there. When I'm not doing my day job, I'm doing stuff like this, and this is a actual traffic light, and the box in my hand is a Raspberry Pi connected with relays that I programmed. And this particular scenario, I was demonstrating it to kids, teaching them how they can use computer science with electrical engineering, as possible career paths. All right, so what is Drupal? Drupal is a content management system. Most people are familiar with WordPress or Joomla, and Drupal is kind of I won't say the redheaded stepchild, but kind of the very least known. It is open source. It is created by Dries Bytart. He's also I think he's the chief information officer at a company called Acquia, which primarily does a whole lot of Drupal everything. Drupal functionality outside of the core can be extended by using modules. In WordPress, people know this as plugins, but it's the same concept. Drupal is not often used because it is more technically advanced, and you have to have more familiarity with it, how to use it, just more hands-on experience. The current versions are version 7 and version 8. Version 7 is still popular because of the fact those modules that exist to extend the functionality have to be rewritten for the new framework that is being used in version 8. So a lot of the sites, including the one that I'm going to use today, is written in Drupal 7. Drupal does have a command line interface. It's known as Drush. It has packages in Ubuntu and maybe a few other Linux distros. There's not one on Windows as far as I know. And if you want to look up more about Drupal, the website is drupal.org. All right, so most people think in tech, I've never used a Drupal website. Not so fast. So there are several websites, the White House, the FEMA, and the Weather Channel all use Drupal behind the scenes. The Weather Channel recently did a major upgrade, probably roughly 2 to 3 years ago, to switch over to the Drupal platform. And as you know, the Weather Channel does weather everywhere. So they have millions of data elements that they're trying to log, track, use for historical references, pulling data from other places like the National Weather Service and so forth. So if you want to read about that, you can read up on the case study. FEMA also has the Drupal website as well, and with theirs, they're using like apps, for when you go out in fields in the disaster areas like Florida, for instance, for the recent hurricane. And this interface, the Drupal website allows them to interface from their phones in the field. And a lot of times, if you look at a website, you can kind of tell whether it is Drupal based or not. In the White House website, there's this meta tag that does say Drupal 7 is the generator of the site. All right, so I use Drupal in my personal setup, one of which is FarmOS. FarmOS is a particular Drupal distribution, and it allows for you to manage, it's intended for usage for the farm, but it's also can be used, I use it as for garden and managing like grass and stuff like that. So in that particular screenshot, I actually was tracking the red peppers that I grew this year, and was able to take a photo, upload it into Drupal, and also use the data to track how much, how heavy, how many pounds of peppers I picked and what day I picked them and so forth. Another use that I have for it is issue tracker. So kind of like GitHub has issues, I use the same thing, but for tracking issues with my house and with my vehicle. So I have a long to-do list. That's not even half of it. And one other use you can use is automation. You can Drupal has the capabilities of sending and receiving REST requests. So for instance, if you want, let's say, if I wanted my issue tracker to connect to my Farm OS, I can have my issue tracker trigger, let's say something happened, let's say I added an issue with the grass. Well, that issue could be sent to Farm OS, and it's like, well, you're creating an issue over there, let me log it over here as well. And that allows for automating of tasks. Another thing that I've done is with Farm OS, I have it pulling data from the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service has an XML feed that is available for each locality. So by pulling that data, I'm able to use that to determine whether it has rained or not. And if it hasn't rained within like the last 7 days, I have Farm OS send an email saying there has been no rain, you need to water the grass. So there's many uses of Drupal. All right, now into the demonstration. So these are the knowns. We're going to assume that you're not great at coding or do not know how to code. You have 1 business day to do everything with this particular project. There are no project plans in advance. It has to be a web-based application. It has to have a mobile API, and it must be browser friendly. And you also have to allow the ability to log into the website to have the client to be able to log in to do their own updates. I know a lot of you are thinking, come on, man. All right, so we're going to do this, and it worked when I tested it, but as I do production support on a daily basis, let's hope it still works. All right, so first things first, let's see. All right, so all of the code that I'm gonna be showing, this whole repo, is here on GitHub. Like I said, you can link to my page from the HackMGM page, as I'm a member on there, and all the instructions that we'll be covering are listed here. If we run across something that's not quite right, I'll go back and correct it afterwards. All right, so the first thing we'll do is to set up Drupal. So I have my dev server set up with the code files already in place. So normally you would just go set up your Drupal files, put them in place, set up your web server, so forth. All right, then we'll do the standard installation. And we're choosing English. Why is it? Really? Okay, go back. Looks like we're already calling the fire department. There we go. Okay. So normally you would have to enter your database credentials, and it will prompt to give you a form. So the database name, the user ID, password, and the server credentials, you would enter those. But since I already have a settings PHP file in place, it skipped that particular part of the process. All right, the next step is to enter the site name. So we'll just call it Fast Web App for short. And you have to enter a site email address. Drupal has the capabilities of sending emails out. Did I do that right? Yeah. Okay. All right, and then you set up your settings. Obviously, we're in the United States. Time zone. If you want update notifications, you can put these in place. If not, you can easily just turn them off and save and continue. All right, and once Drupal is done, it'll allow you to log into the website. All right, so with the standard installation, you get a lot of additional modules installed that you really don't need. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn those off, and these steps are also, again, in the GitHub README file. So we don't need comments, dashboard, database logging, scrolling down, overlay, and shortcut. All right, and then we do need to turn on some additional modules to get all of this functionality. So we need, scrolling down, we need C tools. This is called C tools for short, but it's chaos tools. Services, which will enable the usage of a REST API, and then we also need the REST server. All right, and we'll click continue. If you forget to check something, Drupal says, hey, I need this to complete this. You just turn it on anyway. All right, so we'll go back to the home page, and we're gonna create a new content type, well, new content. When you use the standard installation, it creates the article and the basic page content types. For most stuff, if you're just creating static pages, you'll use the basic page type. And so we'll give it something simple. And we will save. All right, so now we have the first page is active and it can be accessed at this URL. All right, so now that we have one page in place, we're going to make this site mobile friendly. So there's a theme here called Mayo, and we're going to enable that and also set it as the default, and then we'll go into settings. And with Drupal, a lot of times the configuration items do not initially save to the database when you set them up. So it's always best to go in and save the options, even if you don't change them initially. All right, let me go back and set that to default. All right, so this is our mobile friendly theme. And if you resize it, you see how it kind of puts everything in a single column. But if you expand it, there's the sidebar that's over here now. So we've completed the mobile browser version of this. All right, so the next is to go to structure, and we can rearrange the items on the page. Like we wanted the search bar to be below the navigation. Go to structure, blocks, and here are each of the blocks. And so there are additional blocks at the bottom that you're not using if you wanted to move them around. Like if I wanted to get rid of this powered by Drupal, just move it down to the disabled section. And if I went to search box below the navigation, I can move it there and then hit save. And so now you see the search box is below the navigation, and also the Drupal footer is removed.
That's a lot like widgets in WordPress.
Right. Same concept, different name.
Right.
All right. So now that we've done our page layout, we can go and create our REST API. So we go to structure again and services. And so we're going to add an endpoint. And we're going to name the endpoint. Now, the machine name is the internal name. Think of it as like the unique identifier for that particular service. So we're going to name it API, and machine names have to be lowercase. If not, Drupal will, if you type the wrong thing in, it will display an error. And the server we're going to select is the REST server. This is one of the options that we turned on when we did our module updates. So we're not going to do session authentication. That's a little bit more complex for this particular demonstration. And so we'll save. And now we have our REST API available. So we'll go to edit resources, and we need to be able to pull content from that REST API. So we're going to, Node is a, how can I phrase it? So in Drupal, there's the concept of entities, and users are entities, pages, which we refer to as nodes, are also entities, and taxonomy, which is kind of like keywords or categories, are also known as entity or types of entities. So with the node entity, basically a basic page is a type of node, and a node is a type of an entity. So in order to be able to access the page that we did create, we'll need to be able to retrieve a node, and if you want to list all of the pages, you'll need to turn on the indexing of a node. You can create nodes, but we won't do that in this demo. That's also a little bit more advanced. So now that we have our retrieve and index capabilities turned on for our API, we will hit save. All right. And so the next thing is to test the REST API, and we will use Firefox. Chrome has an extension. I'm not for sure of what it is, but I do know that Firefox also has an extension called Poster. All right, and we will take this URL. And so By default, when you do a API request, it will return XML, but if you put .json at the end of it, you will get a JSON response. And so here is our JSON response that shows the full list. Since we only have one node, it is only listing that one node, but if there were additional nodes, it would show those as well. All right, and to get only just that particular node, you specify the node ID, and the node ID can be found by either going to the page and looking at the URL, or if you're looking in the database, you'll see it the same way. It'll have this unique identifier of 1. And so we just append that to the URL and do a GET request. And these are all the elements in that. We have the revision ID, we have the user ID, the title, the status, whether the node is visible to the public or not, is commenting turned on or not, is it promoted to the front page, and various other elements in here as well. So now you have a fully functioning web application that is also mobile friendly, and it did not take you 8 hours to build it. With a REST API. So, any questions? And yes, you can have hard questions. Just
I thought that's a pretty good overview of Drupal.
yes, it is. It's the quick and short version. It is a little bit more elaborate if you want to get more involved, as far as like you can, with the bicentennial application that we're building, we actually have custom additional content types that we're using, and that allows for us to have additional fields. So we can go in and put in, let's see, so we can specify field types. These are just the default types, but like I say, you can add additional modules. There's an email field type, there's an address field type, there's all kinds of additional field types that can be added, and it will do validation on that type, if you make it mandatory.
What's the backend database?
What is it? This is MySQL, but it also supports SQLite and one other type of database. So,
Postgres, maybe?
sorry?
Postgres?
I think it is Postgres. Yeah.
Maybe that's just a guess.
Yes.
So for your app constantly,
Yes.
have you all defined the specs for the data that will be available via the API?
We have some of them available. Let's see. Nope. We are okay. We do have some of them available, but we're still working on everything else. We have a high-level view of everything at this point, and we'll tweak it as need be.
You ever foresee putting out like an FRI where people can maybe request, check the basic framework and they see what type of data you're housing? Because it looks like in Drupal it's pretty straightforward to turn on things.
Yes.
Have you had conversations about being open to people asking for data within the site, and then you maybe turn those functions on?
We do plan the data to be made openly available. Whether it's going to be openly available from that particular database, or whether we reuse that database for other things, and we make it a family of solutions, is still
That's hot.
Trying to get it to come up. Okay, here we go. So
Yeah, I just saw that.
I'll give you a history on that. So where I work, our clients, we had a system, the system that does all the access provisioning, and so the root user is called IAmAdmin. So I just kind of took it from that.
Nice.
Let's see. All right, so here's the historic marker content type. And so in here we have the stuff that you would probably think that would be necessary. So like, what county is it in, what city, location. We have the ability to put pictures in here as well. So all of that is accessible via the API.
Especially if you're going from a jump, allowing for JSON output.
Yes,
So that's cool.
yes. And see, even Even if you don't want a JSON, did I close it? I think I did. Okay. Even if you don't want a JSON output, you could also get